Hey guys, this is Steven here with another video on how to play some of my favorite puzzles. This one is on Nonograms, also known as Picross, Griddlers, or Pic-a-Pix. It can be a grid of any dimension, but usually it's symmetrical and by fives. In this case, I'll show an example where it's a 15 by 15 grid. In each cell within the table, it must either be shaded or left alone, according to the numbers outside the grid. The numbers indicate how many contiguous cells are shaded in the respective row or column. So if we look at this first row, or this first column for instance, we see a number 4. So 4 contiguous cells can be shaded. Could be these 4, could be these 4, could be these 4. We don't quite know which 4 cells are shaded, but we do know that it's 4 cells in a row, and that's part of the game, right? We have to figure out which cells are shaded and which ones are not. Once the puzzle is complete, it usually reveals a pixelated photo of some sort, which can be a nice reward for finishing. If there are multiple numbers given for a row or column, there must be a space between the shaded cells. So in this row, for instance, we'll see a 5 and a 6. So these 5 cells could be shaded, and there'd be a space, and then it could be, say, these 6. Now the space, there could be 2 cells, 3 cells, or 4 cells in between. We don't know if it's these 5 and then these 6, or it could be these 5 and then this 6. All we know is that it's first 5 cells in a row, and then a space of some sort, and then 6 cells in a row. So that's about it. It's a lot of fun. I definitely would recommend you give it a shot. What I'm going to do is I'm going to start this puzzle a little bit just to give you some tips and tricks on how I fill these out. I'm not going to complete the whole puzzle just for the sake of time, but let's get started. So what I typically start off with are large numbers. I look for the largest numbers on the board and I start there. The reason for that is they're typically the easier clues. So for instance, 15, that's the largest number it can possibly be. We know then it's all 15 cells are shaded. So right off the bat, I know all of these cells can be shaded in. So the harder puzzles usually won't give you that easy of a clue. So let me show another example. What I'm specifically looking for are any numbers larger than 1/2 the dimension of the grid, right? So in this case, anything greater than 7. So 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, or 15 will work for me. And the reason for that here is we'll start with 8, which is the smallest number that's still greater than 1/2. We know that even with an 8, we can at least fill in a 1 cell automatically right off the bat, and it's this middle one. And the reason for that is if we come down here and we'll do an example. We'll look at this. There's 8 possibilities. It could be these 8 cells, or if we nudge it down 1, leaving the first cell blank, could be those 8. Or if we leave the first 2 blank, right? It could be any of these scenarios, but what we notice is no matter what, there's always 1 cell that's shared, and it's this middle row, right? So no matter what happens, that middle cell is always going to be shaded. So if we come back here, we know this middle cell is going to be shaded in, right? So we usually would do it with a gray. We'd pencil it in or shade it in. You can mark it with a 0, however you want to mark it. But in another way of calculating it is you're looking for the overlapping squares by using the max edge possibilities. So what I mean by that is if we start from the edges, right? So in this case, since it's a column, we start from the top and count down 8. And if we start from the bottom and count up 8, there'll be one overlapping square, right? So I'll do them side by side so you can visualize it. And because there's that one overlapping cell, that's the one you would shade in. So we'll do another example. Down here we'll see 11. So 11 is obviously greater than 7.5, which is the 1/2. We can automatically fill in these cells. And the reason for that, I'll scroll down a little bit. If I fill in from the edge, or in this case the left, and I shade 11, it would be these cells. And then if I go from the opposite edge, the right, and I fill in 11 cells, it would be those. So you can see there's an overlap. Those cells there are the ones that overlap. So we could color those in. Right, and so you can see right away, all of these that are 8, we can fill those in. And then we could do the same with 13, right? We would fill, there's 13 from the left, 13 from the right, and these are the ones that overlapped, and we could color those in. So again, that is why big numbers are so helpful in this type of puzzle. So the other thing that I like to look at is on the harder puzzles, if I can start from an edge, that helps me a lot. And the reason for that is, let's unhighlight these just for illustrative purposes. So I have some cells shaded in from the edge, and I can work in from that. So I know that this column here, it's got to be these 8 cells, right? And the reason for that is there's no way it can be all the way up here, because I can't have a space, right? There's only one digit. It's 8 contiguous cells. So it has to connect with this bottom shaded cell. And so all I do is I count the contiguous cells up from that one that's already shaded. So I know that these 8 are going to be shaded, and I look to the column to the left and it's the same thing. 8, 8, and then over here it's 7. So there's those 7, and then it's 6. And so it's those 6, and then these are 15. So there we go. So already you can see how helpful it is to have ones from an edge. Now, I'm not done with this column. So here, there's another 5 cells I'm missing. Now I've already filled in my 6, and I know there's at least one space. So I know that this one can't be shaded in. And from there, we can combine our tricks, right? Previously, if we count from the edge, we imagine this is an edge now, 5 cells. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And then we count from the top, 5 cells. I'm going to do it just over to the right, just so you can see. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And these 2 cells here are overlapping, right? If I count down from the top 5, or I count from the bottom 5, either way, these are overlapping. Now I don't know if it's going to be these 3 that we add, or these 3 that we add, or it could be a mixture, right? Could be these, could be those, but I do know that no matter what, these 2 are always filled in. So going back to it again, we want to look for the overlapping squares by using the edge possibilities. I hope that makes sense. Once you do a few of these, it'll become a little bit more intuitive. So as you've kind of guessed, what you're trying to do is you try to find the easiest cells first, and then you work in and out from those squares that are already solved, right? So in this instance, in this top row, I already have 2 cells solved. I can work from there. So I know it's a 4. So if we count the maximum it could be over to the right, we know that all of these are not going to be shaded. And then if we count to the maximum the opposite direction, it'd be these 4. So we know that these can't be shaded, right? And so forth. And then same thing with the 6. We count 6 from this edge here, 2, 4, 6. And we know that these cannot be filled in, and vice versa. there's 6. So that takes us all the way to the edge. So hopefully that helps. One last tip I'll give before ending this video short is if you can look for sequences that total the length of the grid, in this case 15, and you include spaces, that's going to be tremendously helpful as well. So for instance, if we look at this column here, we add the 9 plus the 2 plus the 2, that should be 13, right? 9 plus 2 is 11, plus the 2 is 13, and there's 2 spaces in between, right? So there's the 2, and then there's a space and another 2, 2 and a space and a 9. If we count those as spaces as well, we get 13 plus 1 plus 1, it's 15. So because it totals 15, and guess what, there's 15 cells, there's only one possible outcome, and it's counting the, from the edge. So we know that these 2 have to be shaded, then it's a space, these 2 are shaded, and then it's a space, and then these 9 are shaded. And that filled all 15, right? The 2 space, then the 9. Now, if you can count the total and it's, say, 14 and not 15, that's still helpful because now there's only 2 possibilities, right? A space on one end and then a space on another end, or maybe there's 2 spaces in the middle. But the idea is the less possible outcomes there are, the easier it is for you to logically deduce what the answer is. So that is all I wanted to share with you guys. Again, I'm not going to finish this for the sake of time. I think if I were to, I think it ends up looking like a flamingo or some sort of bird. But again, it's a lot of fun. I definitely recommend giving it a shot. Start off with the easier ones, get a feel for it. And if you like this video, hit that thumbs up button and subscribe for more videos like this in the future. Thanks everyone. Have a good day.